True Gamer here, and I'm back with another episode. The first ever Street Fighter game in a series was released in the arcades in the year 1987, and it was developed by Capcom and Dimps, and they kicked off the main series. Now, we did port over to the Commodore 64 the following year, and this is my copy, as you can see in front of you right now on the screen. And these were the times, guys and girls, where games were running off a cassette. So you would have needed a cassette player. I'll tell you one thing, it took a lifetime to load, and it was not enjoyable waiting on that multicolored load screen to boot into your game. So Capcom went solo and developed this version for the Commodore 64, and they also were the publishers. And the creators of the whole franchise, I believe, is Takashi Nishiyama and Hiroshi Matsumoto. Now, I could be wrong, and I could have even made a mess of their name, but there's one thing for sure, Street Fighter 1 did port over to the Commodore 64. And the artwork in them days were in a league of its own and could tell its own story just by looking at it. This cover art is one for the ages and looks absolutely brilliant. Now, you can literally play Street Fighter 1 in 2023 on every platform known to mankind. So the best way to play it is to get yourself the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, and it is available on the Xbox One, PlayStation 4 and even the Nintendo Switch. Initially, Capcom had plans for Final Fight to be the sequel to Street Fighter 1, but they decided to scrap that idea. So next up in the series was Street Fighter 2, The World Warrior. And this was a game changer in the series because the epic combo system was introduced. When this was released in 1991, it blew up the arcade parlors in every country, district and town, and people absolutely went nuts for this game. And still to this day, Street Fighter is the king of 2D fighting games, and it made Capcom billions of collateral. I can remember after school, all my lunch money went in that wretched arcade machine. I used to go home starving. So by the time this got released for the Super Famicom, it was perfect timing because home systems were starting to dominate the gaming industry and arcades were phasing out. And this was released in the arcades in 1991, and then it was ported to the Super Famicom in 1994. And Capcom was both the developers and publishers, and this was their prized possession. And it's always a bonus to have a Super Famicom game with all of its bright, colourful paperwork. Let's look at that. Isn't that a wonderful sight, ladies and gentlemen? The update to the series was Street Fighter 2 Champions Edition, known as Street Fighter 2 Dash in Japanese, and it allowed you to play as the bosses, and now two players can select the same character. After a few iterations came to the series, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo dropped, and it had a new special technique known as Super Combos, and Akuma was the hidden character. And I'm lucky enough to have the box, but unfortunately manuals are not included. Street Fighter 3 New Generations was the next in line in the main series, debuted in the arcades in 1997, and Super Art Selection System arrived and Perry ability was born, and you can now play as Alex, and Gil replaced Bison as the main antagonist. Several months later, Street Fighter 3 Second Impact was released in the wild, and it was the return of Akuma. Then, the first two Street Fighter games was ported over to the Dreamcast with the title Street Fighter 3 Double Impact. And what this is, it had Street Fighter 3 New Generations and Street Fighter 3 Second Impact packed on one disc. And as you see on the cover art, we have Ryu supplying Ken with a Shoryuken on the front with this vintage art style looking absolutely amazing. And it was released on the Dreamcast in 1999, and Capcom were both the developers and the publishers. And you'll be pleased to know, guys, this is what you call complete in box. As you see, I have the manual, the registry card, and the Japanese spine card. And just check out this disc. It looks absolutely glamtastic. Then Street Fighter Third Strike landed in the arcades in 1999, then ported over to the Dreamcast in the year 2000 as a single standalone home version of the game. And just check out this cover art. Just looks epic with Cammy on the front in military mode. Definitely one for the history books. This cover art looks absolutely stupendous. So Street Fighter 3 Third Strike was the third and last iteration of the Street Fighter 3 series, and keeping it in the family, Capcom once again were the developers and publishers. Now this isn't CIB, but I do have the manual. I have to say, the Japanese really know how to decorate a disc. Just to inform you, you can get a disc with all three of these games on it, and it is known as Street Fighter 3 the Triple Pack. Next in the main series was Street Fighter 4, and I'm torn between this and 2 to place in that #1 spot. But this game was very special because it was the return of the original 12 on the roster, plus 4 new characters were included with a unlockable Akuma. Street Fighter 4 was supposed to be a direct sequel to Street Fighter 2 World Warrior because the storyline was set between 2 and 3, which can be a bit confusing because I know normally 4 comes after 3, but not in this case. Other than that, I do prefer this art style with these cel-shaded 3D graphics inspired by the Japanese Simi-E paintings. And as always, a new combo system was born with the new attacking technique called Focus Attack, along with an Ultra Combo move. Now Street Fighter did have a limited release for the arcade in 2008. Then a home version was released in 2009 for the PS3, Xbox 360 and Windows PC. And Capcom was still printing out them succulent manuals. So I even loved the game so much, I bought myself the collector's edition, which came with a miniature figurine of C. Viper and Ryu. And it had a few extra goodies. It even came with a feature-length anime movie along with a strategy guide, an art book, and some downloadable content. We gave you a costume pack. Yeah, you even had a different cover art on the case. It was different to what you would have got with the standard edition. So this was the Street Fighter 4 Collector's Edition. Then a year later, Super Street Fighter 4 was released, and this is just basically DLC on a disc, and it comes with the original game with additional characters and added a balance adjustment and a second ultra for each of the characters, and also some new game modes were introduced. Now they did release another Super Street Fighter 4 and they called it Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, which again is just basically DLC on a disc. And yeah, that's how they got their extra content back then. So in that edition, the Street Fighter 4, the Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, you could play as some characters from the Street Fighter 3 series, including Evil Ryu. I don't have that one, but I do have Super Street Fighter 4, and yeah, Capcom was still producing high quality instruction booklets. Just look at that. The manual itself is a work of art. In 2014, another update for Street Fighter 4 arrived, and it was this Ultra Street Fighter 4, which all it really is DLC on a disc, because it just contains a few tweaks, additional modes, stages, and 5 new characters were added, and then they just made you buy the game again instead of bringing out Street Fighter 5. And it was first available on PS3, then later on the next gen consoles in 2015. And by this time, manuals were a thing of the past, because all they were supplying was this one sheet of paper. And the latest into the main series is Street Fighter 5, and it was released exclusively by Capcom for the PS4 and PC only way back in 2016. Now I did get the collector's edition, and this is what the box looks like. And it came with an art book and a few extra DLC goodies, but it was all about this terrific Ryu statue, as you can see him with his traditional combat pose. And this is the back, and you can just stand it up like so. But just check out this masterpiece. Now, the first release of Street Fighter 5 had 16 characters. Then an update came in 2018, which was available digitally and physically, and it was called Street Fighter 5 Arcade Edition. Then the final iteration to the Street Fighter 5 series was Street Fighter 5 Champions Edition, and this added a whopping 30 characters to the roster, all on one disc. And again, you could also get this digitally. So straight out the box, you would have got all of their updates from past to present, all on one disc. So Capcom have followed their trend by releasing different versions of the same game, just either adding new characters, either new game modes, or in some circumstances, new moves. But the wait is over, because the next time we see another Street Fighter game, it will be the sequel in June, when Street Fighter 6 will be fresh on the scene once and for all. Okay, so that's every Street Fighter game in the main series so far, from 1 to 5. And as you see, I fell in love with Street Fighter many moons ago, playing in the fish and chip shops and the arcade parlours. Now, these Street Fighter games which I have got are just scratching the surfaces. There are so many spin-offs to the franchise, it will be impossible to own every game that has been created. But I will be showing all of my Street Fighter games I have in my collection, which is not part of the main series. So keep your eyes open for that one. Okay guys, if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. Even better, subscribe. Till next time, see ya.